Picture this, a runaway novice nun turned governess who somehow talks a stiff Austrian naval captain into loving music again, marries him, and then leads his whole family over the mountains to escape the Nazis, all set to some of the catchiest songs ever put on film. That's the sound of music, and behind the wholesome exterior is a chute full of chaos, near misses, and secrets that never made it into the trailer. Stick around, because the ending of this one involves a kid nearly drowning during what was supposed to be a cute little splash in a lake. But first, let's roll back the curtain on how this whole thing almost didn't happen the way we remember it. Julie Andrews almost passed on playing Maria entirely. She'd just wrapped Mary Poppins, which hadn't even hit theaters yet, and she was terrified of getting typecast as Hollywood's go-to-singing nanny for the rest of her career. What actually won her over wasn't the music, it was a conversation with the director about keeping the story honest instead of syrupy. She signed on, and then watched Mary Poppins beat this film into theaters and land her an Oscar right before this one arrived, turning her supposed career Trapp into a legendary 1-2 punch. That gazebo where Liesl and Rolf dance and sing about growing up. Mostly a set built on a soundstage back in California. The real one on location in Austria was gorgeous but tiny, so a second, roomier version got built indoors for the actual choreography. Even that wasn't safe, the actress playing Liesl slipped during filming, crashed through a prop window, and sprained her ankle, which the crew simply hid under makeup and kept shooting. Decades later, the real gazebo became such a popular tourist photo spot that people kept getting hurt trying to recreate the dance on its narrow benches, including one visitor who broke a hip. It's locked up behind a small fence today. Casting the captain was its own saga. Names like Sean Connery, Richard Burton, and Bing Crosby were floated before the role landed on Christopher Plummer, who thought the whole project was way too sentimental and only agreed once the script gave his character more edge. Plummer also didn't have the vocal range for the songs, so a professional session singer quietly recorded the sustained notes while Plummer's real voice handled the rest, blended so seamlessly that almost nobody noticed for decades. Even the film's dreamy opening shot was rougher than it looks. To capture that sweeping helicopter shot of Andrews spinning in the meadow, the crew had to fly directly at her with the chopper door removed, and the downdraft literally knocked her over into the grass, repeatedly. It took roughly 10 attempts before they got a usable take, and by the end she was, understandably, out of patience. A young Kurt Russell and a young Mia Farrow both auditioned for roles as Von Trapp children and got turned down. Farrow even made it to a full-screen test that later surfaced on an anniversary DVD release. Neither ended up hurting for work afterward, so the rejection clearly wasn't personal. Here's a fun blink-and-you-miss-it detail. The real Maria von Trapp appears in the movie herself, walking through a crowd scene for about 2 seconds with her daughter and granddaughter, uncredited and unannounced. She'd traveled all the way to watch her own life get filmed and simply got folded into the background. Speaking of the real story, Hollywood rewrote almost all of it. The family didn't hike dramatically over the Alps to freedom, they quietly took a train and later toured through Italy using existing citizenship. The real captain was warm and musical long before Maria arrived, nothing like the cold authoritarian shown early in the film. And the family actually had 10 children, not 7, with ages, names, and even genders shuffled around for the movie. Christopher Plummer never warmed up to the material, reportedly nicknaming the film something rhyming with mucus and joking about it constantly during production. He leaned into the local food and drink so much that his costumes needed altering more than once, and he later admitted to shooting the big finale scene while thoroughly unbothered by sobriety. None of that stopped him from turning in a performance people still quote today. That charming detail about Maria sewing the children's clothes from old curtains. Completely true, the costume designer for the film leaned into it so heavily that the finished outfits became some of cinema's most recognizable, later selling at auction for well over $1 million. One of the singing nuns in the Abbey scenes was actually a legendary Hollywood ghost singer who'd secretly provided the singing voices for major stars in other classic films, always uncredited. Putting her on camera here, finally as herself, was a quiet thank you for years of invisible work. Filming stretched on for 6 months, long enough that some of the child actors visibly grew during production. One boy shot up several inches mid-shoot, forcing the crew to use shoe lifts and apple boxes just to keep the on-screen sibling height order believable. And here's a gut punch. The Real Maria sold the rights to her own life story for a flat fee, no royalties, at a moment when money was tight after her husband passed away. Those rights eventually led to the Broadway musical and then this film, which made an absolute fortune, very little of which ever circled back to her, though producers did later offer her a goodwill payment. Finally, that cute scene where the children tip over into the lake was scripted and went off perfectly on the first take. On the second take, ordered as a safety retake, the boat flipped the wrong way, and the youngest actress, who couldn't actually swim, went under and swallowed a mouthful of lake water before another child actor pulled her to safety. She was fine, though she later admitted the whole experience left her nervous around boats and open water for years afterward. So next time you watch this film and it feels effortless and warm, remember it was built on sprained ankles, flatulent studio lights, a growing cast, a near drowning, and one very reluctant leading man calling the whole thing too sweet for his taste. Sometimes the messiest productions make the most beloved movies.